We want to be free. We want to do what we want to do. We want to have a good time. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to have a good time.
Welcome, one and all, to another episode of Bygone Bros. This is Kyle White. I'm joined by Trevor White, my brother in arms here. And we'll be doing another episode this week, but on an especially hot day. So both of us have shut off our fan systems to try to cut out the background noise. And as a result, we are both sweating inside of our respective apartments. How are you doing over there, Trevor?
I'm getting there for now. It's the heat wave broke. It was really bad a couple days ago, but it's tolerable now. So fingers crossed and sweaty.
It's really hot here too. I think in my apartment it's probably in the 80s right now.
Sheesh.
So I'm doing my best to stay cool. I hope all of you listeners out there who are in at least the northern hemisphere are doing okay. I do have a colleague who's in the southern hemisphere, and he showed up to a meeting online and was wearing a hoodie and was complaining about it being 45 degrees. So never forget that there's another half of the planet that's experiencing the exact opposite of what you're going through.
Yep.
Very strange. Anyway, that's enough of a side tangent. So getting into our main topic for today, Trevor, did you want to do the honors of bringing up our discussion?
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about what I am calling classic snacks. It's got a nice ring to it, but what we're specifically looking at is kids' foods and snack foods, not always the same thing, that were big in the use of ourselves, and I imagine a lot of folks listening to this, so we're talking early 90s to late 2000s. Cookies, cakes, sodas, and more.
And it's kind of tricky because I think we're cheating a little bit on this one, because I think a lot of the snacks we'll be talking about today probably still exist in some form. I guess we can get into that for ones that we kind of don't see as much anymore. But I feel like a lot of the things that come to mind for me are things that, like, no, I'm pretty sure you could still track those down. But I think a lot of them also had kind of a heyday during that interval of time.
Yep.
Were there any, just kind of jumping off the bat here, are there any that stand out to your mind as being especially emblematic of sort of the let's say the 90s?
Yeah, I mean, I think fruit by the foot, fruit roll-ups, those kinds of products that were like toys but also food, which is really how you market to kids. I mean, number one with the bullet, you could make like little symbols, or they would have patterns and things on them that you could do stuff with. Because, I mean, you and I and probably a lot of other people's responsible parents, we didn't have a lot of that around the house. We didn't have it in our lunches. It is pretty sugary, and we'll get more into that later. A lot of artificial colors and flavors and all those things that your mothers shudder at. But that made it kind of more fun, because some other kid would have them, or you'd see them on the store shelf, and when you finally did get to try them at a party or a holiday or something, it's like, man, this is pretty sweet, but I kind of dig it. Like it is something that feels like a sort of for you in that way.
It kind of, I think this is something that persists to this day, but that sort of lesson that you get as far as schoolyard bartering and trading, where, we didn't get any of these things, because our parents were responsible, but we would have friends and classmates that would get these kinds of, Hostess products or fruit by the foot and that kinds of things. And then, of course, there'd be some sort of trade or arrangement made to where you could gain access to them. And then that's normally, I think, how we would experience those things.
Yep.
Fruit. It was a fruit roll up and fruit by the foot. Those were the same?
No. So the fruit roll ups, it was like you don't roll it like a scroll almost. It was like this sheet that you would roll out, and they would have like dyed, often images in them. It wasn't just the rolling out part. They'd be like smiley faces or whatever licensed characters. And I think the idea was that you would like put your tongue on it, and the image would be on your tongue, or you could technically, if you're gross, which if you're a kid of the 90s you are, make like a tattoo out of it almost, or like stick it on a piece of paper. Like it was dyed icons, dyed symbols. The fruit roll up was the fruit roll. The fruit by the foot was the one that was like bubble tape, where it was a spiral of it, like a tape measure almost, that you would roll out a strip of it. And then the strip would have little fun images on it and stuff. And they were probably owned by the same company. But yeah, two distinct products.
Right. And I think that I remember the fruit roll up being one where there were versions where when you peeled it off of the paper, they would still sometimes have sort of unique shapes and patterns. I think on those too.
I think some of them might have even been serrated, or maybe I just did that to them. Like you would pull sections of them out that were in certain shapes, like stickers or something.
Yeah. Did you ever have any friends or classmates that would do just that reprehensible thing of taking the entire fruit roll up and just eating the entire thing in one go?
I've heard of such devilry, but I don't know that I've ever witnessed it.
I'm sure I did it at one point just to be like, you know, to be random or something. And
carb loading.
It's not as satisfying. You really have to do the thing where you unravel it and you kind of, you know, string it into your mouth sort of thing. You mentioned bubble tape as well. That was a big one. Definitely not at all satisfying in terms of a bubble gum. Like it kind of tasted like chalk.
Yeah.
And I don't remember it being, I could be wrong, I don't remember it being that great at actually making bubbles. But it was the same thing.
It was the gimmick of the packaging. It fit easily in your pocket. It's fun to pull out, and
I can smell it right now.
Yeah, no, and it smells good. And that's the thing. That chalky kind of gum. I mean, I don't knock that. I had a lot of gums that I enjoyed as a kid. I don't chew gum much anymore. But there was like Bubble Yum, Bubblicious, the ones that they put. Just, I don't know, there was that urban legend of it, like they had put spider eggs in them, which is obviously not true, but you can, I guess some kid must have come up with that because it is such a unique chemical. It's night and day compared to some of those other gums. Like you can't not blow bubbles with this thing. I mean, it gets so chewy and juicy. And then completely other end of the spectrum, the baseball gum, Big League Chew. Yeah, it was like meant to be like, I mean, sort of low key, like kid friendly chewing tobacco, basically, because it was just shreds of stuff that you would take out of a bag and chew on. Yeah. And I played a little bit of baseball, a little bit of baseball as a kid, and even after that, I kind of thought it was a fun way to present it.
Yeah, it's definitely like raises that question of, are you trying to get kids like indoctrinated into the idea of growing up and chewing adult versions of the
literally read any article written in the last 20 years about Joe Campbell. That's all I'll say about that. But I think
yeah, I mean, because like can you think of other examples? I mean, obviously none of it I think was heavy-handedly presented in a way to where, I mean, Joe Camel, of course, but like in general, I think a lot of those things where it's kids pretending to do adult things, I don't think that many of them were that explicitly meant to emulate like drugs. I mean, there were those little things that were like speaking of chalk, like those kind of little white chalk sticks we used to get when we were kids for Halloween. That would have like Spider-Man or different like characters on the little cardboard box, and you'd open it up and it would look like a cigarette box, but there would be like these little white sugar sticks or whatever. So I don't know if that was meant to get was that supposed to be like cigarettes? I don't know.
That's a really good question, because it was like, it's so cheap, it loops back around and you think it's like someone's giving you crack. Yeah. Especially in some of the neighborhoods that we were trick-or-treating in back in the day. It's like, I mean, there are some times you do want to check I'm not looking for razor blades, I'm looking for like Schedule C drugs or something like that. Yeah,
they are deeply suspicious looking, the way that they're presented. And of course, Pixie Sticks is another big one from our youth. I have memories of like after baseball games or something like that, going to the concession stand and getting one of those Pixie Sticks, and it's just straight up sugar.
My mouth's watering right now.
I mean, I can, like, my tongue is like, is getting moister just thinking about just that sheer volume of sugar in those. The tubes were really long. Like that's got to be a product that kids these days aren't allowed to buy anymore, right?
If you know the right back alley, I mean.
Well, there's that. There's that Skrillex song that has that lyric about like, I'm having fun dip right now.
Yeah.
If you recall, right. Fun dip.
Yes. Okay. And that's it too. And again, I don't know if this was chicken and the egg as far as 90s culture, 90s stuff goes, but a lot of these snacks that reveled in how sugary they were. And I think we still have those. We can't pretend that everything just started being healthy after Super Size Me came out, but there definitely was a lot of candies and foods in the 90s and 2000s that were just like, look how gross and sugary and excessive this is. And kind of a kid-friendly version, or I mean, they're both American, you get what I mean, but like when you go to like a Hardee's or something, they got their joke giant insane burger that'll give you a heart attack if you try to eat it. It's gluttony essentially, and not even in a biblical sense, just like dip this sugar stick in this bag of other sugar No, just go crazy. I mean, literally run around in circles. We have tricks. We have the same guy, the same rabbit selling you both cereal and yogurt. Just make the whole breakfast be bright pink.
Yeah, exactly. And I have memories of, there were certain candies we were obviously discouraged from having too much of as kids. I remember beverages too, there being ones that we were kind of not supposed to have. And for some reason, specifically red Gatorade was always the one that it was like, no, you can't have red Gatorade. It'll make you like too hyperactive. I don't know if it's like the fruit punch, the sugar content. I'm sure it was like
I mean, it could have been. Maybe somebody read some article about one of the particular dyes. I think, honestly, it's just hard to get out of your clothes if you stain it. And even on the off chance that I have a Gatorade these days, my tongue is just looking like a rave. It really is a lot of... It's hard to wash out. But I do miss, of that era, and this is kind of getting a little closer to the 2000s, some of the sodas and the Gatorades, just the looks of them. I mean, we've talked about styles of different eras before, and sort of the weirdness and the edginess of a lot of that kind of branding was a good time to be a Mountain Dew drinker, I guess I would say, because that's when Code Red got
it's
introduced.
Always a good time to be a Mountain Dew drinker.
Yeah. Yeah. Mountain Dew Code Red. They said it was limited edition. They're still selling it 20 years later. I think they were lying to me. I don't know.
So that was a lie.
And the Gatorades. I remember the Gatorades. I don't know if it was all of them or just some of them. They had like avalanches and like icebergs on them, and they were called like Glacier Rush or whatever. And I just got, that was like X Games era, all that stuff. I got such a thrill out of that as a 12-year-old.
Absolutely. Yeah, between the way that like drinks and candies and snacks, all those things and the ways in which they were marketed, I feel like there was a lot more passion, if that makes sense. And that's a real like USA American thing to say, is like, I wish that there was more passion in corporate advertising and branding. But it's true. Like a lot of it's nostalgia and rose tinted glasses, but looking back on those products, like you said, it was like very like in your face, like probably kind of overly edgy and a little bit of that gross out kind of stuff we talked about in a previous episode. But there was energy and there, not just the sugar giving you the energy, but there was an energy in the way in which the products were presented. And like, yeah, I'm an adult now. Like, I'm not as closely examining, the kids' candy and snacks aisle anymore. But I feel like just in my offhanded glances, everything now is very safely branded. It's very like, and I'm not going to say this is bad overall. I think it's very good, but like everything now is much more marketed towards like appearing very clean, very trying to present itself as being healthy, even though a lot of it's not. And it's kind of sterilized, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't disagree, but I guess a couple of thoughts on that for me would be, candy's existed for a long time. Junk food has existed in some way, shape, or form for a long time. So has health conscious food. I mean, even in the 80s and the 90s, diet culture, for better or worse, a lot of these things. So these things always come and go. They're always existing kind of in orbit around each other, sort of yin and yang. But I would say definitely that the way that these things are marketed and presented definitely has had a shift over time. We still have some of these brands, especially breakfast stuff, Pop-Tarts and some of these cereals that are definitely still zany and colorful, and whether they should be or not, aimed at kids. And a lot of that is that brand. They have built that brand up for a long time. And you'll see things even before these trends we're talking about, like your classic cereal mascots, or Tony the Tigers, or other foods, Green Giants. We have these figures that endure to this day. I mean, they made a whole terrible movie called Food Fight out of them. But there are a lot of these icons of different eras that they change and they morph over time. But definitely there was a specific shift that it took in kind of this period, not just in terms of how things were presented, not just in terms of the marketing, but the way that they were sold and designed. I think we talked on a previous episode about coloring, unnatural coloring in foods, like not talking making your butter yellow, but like all that green Shrek stuff or purple ketchup.
Green Shrek ketchup. Yeah. That's exactly what comes to mind.
Shrek-up, yes.
Shrek-up. Yeah, where that comes from, is it produced by Shrek in some form? We don't know.
I think it's what he was pulling out of his ear in the credits of the first movie. How could I forget? Fruit Gushers, Go-Gurt. I mean, Fruit stuff Gushers. That is just kind of, I mean, it's yogurt, but it's like messy, or it can be messy, or you can freeze it. And Pop-Tarts, they kind of market that more now, but stuff that you can put in the toaster, put in the Put in the freezer, Hot Pockets, those kinds of things. Just stuff that is quick and kind of pack some energy into it and is colorful. But it could also just be something you throw in your lunchbox when you're going to grade school.
Are there any? Because we've touched on a lot of, I think, kind of the sweeter stuff. Mm-hmm. Are there any sort of savory or salty snacks?
I would say
you can think of
a couple. Lunchables.
That's salty.
Salty. That's sodium and it's quadruple digit salty.
300% of your daily value of sodium. Lunchables.
So I have a confession to make. That is, I don't want to call it a comfort food, but like every once in a while, I will just get one of those things. And speaking of, and so I mean, you're having a day or you're on a trip and you're going to a gas station. It's one of the quickest things to get that doesn't require meddling with the microwave. Because you do get the cheese and the crackers and the bread, and it's all nitrites to the moon and back. I don't mess around with the pizza ones. I'm just talking strictly the classic meat, cheese, and crackers.
Oh, the pizza ones where you made your own pizza.
Yeah, too DIY. I've already lost interest.
But those are like Mr. Krabs with like the saltine and ketchup or whatever.
Yeah.
Like
Chippy the cheapskate.
Chippy the cheapskate.
Just to bring it back to what we were talking about earlier, I have seen an explosion in recent years of like classy Lunchables. My office actually has these, and they're good. I mean, they call them like a charcuterie, whatever. I mean, it's a perfect example of how a lot of these ideas themselves, it's about the quality, of course, but the presentation is a big deal, and these shifts in presentation make some of these things maybe seem more nostalgic or more old than they are, but they've really been selling us the same stuff for a long time. Like, except for when New Coke happened and the world almost burned. I mean, Coke is Coke. For the most part, they make subtle changes over time, but people like the fact that these things are similar. But depending on what era you grew up in, you might have a different feel for them. I know you look at a 7-Up logo now versus a 7-Up logo in the the 60s or something. It's all just about how it's presented. But I think when the presentation is so unique and playful and evocative, it's it can affect how you feel about it in a good way. I think a lot of times people talk about how they might taste different depending on what the color of the plate is or how large it is or something. I think a lot of these, they just felt that much more exciting because of the way that they were presented.
Yeah, I mean, it's my philosophy as an amateur chef is that presentation is half of the flavor. So it needs to taste good, but I also really like things that are presented well. I'm not sure I would say that Lunchables was particularly well presented, but I guess it's kind of like a Western bento box.
It was efficiently presented, and
efficiently.
I guess a bridge between that and other. I mean, well, because I'm using the word snacks, and I want to acknowledge that also includes like kid cuisine. Or
kid cuisine, it was meant to be a meal for a child, but the portions on those things were pretty small even for a kid.
I had one of those once or twice, I think, when our folks were just swamped and any port in a storm. I just, the whole idea, even since I was a kid, and I don't know if it's because I just wasn't raised this way, we didn't have a microwave. We had a microwave, but we didn't use it for that kind of stuff. The whole idea of TV dinners or microwave dinners, I will admit to having a lot of times where I'm busy and I make the rice bowl or it's a thing with stuff on it, but it's like a bowl. But these ones where here's the meat, here's the brownie or whatever, all that
mashed potatoes.
That is leave that in the Carter era. I mean, I just can't with it's
the hungry man's breakfast.
I mean, again, I eat a lot of junk food. We've talked about a lot of it. We'll continue to talk about a lot of it right now. So I'm not throwing stones at a glass house, but just that way of eating. Maybe it's a privilege, but I just have never really needed to do that, nor have I really wanted to do it. I enjoy making, even if the most complicated thing that I'm making is a sandwich or pasta, just not sticking it in the microwave. Like, where's the satisfaction of that?
Yeah, it's sort of the illusion of having a well-rounded, balanced meal, but the reality is it's a bunch of hyper-processed. You're taking the entire salt shaker and dumping it on the food.
Yeah, it's like airplane food basically, which.
I think I've had airplane food that was better.
Oh, without
by
question,
far than those.
It better be what you're paying for those tickets. The other one I was going to mention just popped into my head when you mentioned savory snacks, SpaghettiOs, because I would argue. Well, is right because I got violently ill after eating those ones.
Spaghetti.
Which I don't know. That might have just been a coincidence, but it's put me off them ever since.
I have to bring up relatedly Chef Boyardee.
Yes.
There was a Chef. That was huge when we were kids. Oh boy, for Chef Boyardee.
Yes.
I don't know why. I don't like tomatoes. I'll admit that right now. I don't like tomatoes. Tomato soup, tomato juice. I don't do V8 or any of that. But one time I was really excitedly pressuring our aunt into getting me the Garfield Chef Boyardee, where there was like these little noodles that were shaped like Garfield, because I saw Garfield and I was really excited and I was a dumb kid.
Yeah.
And then I got it and then I like could not stomach it. And, you know, she was saying like, hey, like you picked this out, like you need to follow through on this here. And I started trying to like make myself eat more. And then I started to like actually throw up, and then she was like, all right, we're done. And I felt so guilty about it because I was like really, you know, pleading to get this Garfield Chef Boyardee, and then it ended up being, you know, immediate food poisoning essentially.
I think it was the I know it wasn't the same can, but I think I had gargoyles ones, and that was the one I got sick after. I was gargling. I was needing to gargle mouthwash afterwards, but yeah,
you were turning into a gargoyle.
So we got two separate people throwing up after eating SpaghettiOs. I mean, just don't buy that stuff. I'm the opposite of sponsored. I'm the opposite of sponsored by SpaghettiOs. But that's the thing too, is I think that savory snacks. I don't want to use that as a case example, but I think it's easier to make the stuff that can be preserved as like a solid object or frozen, or I think a lot of those are functionally like cheap meals or cheap dinners, but I would consider them a snack. And in the context of this conversation, I've kind of broadened that to be things that are maybe slightly more kid oriented, or they're simple, or they're quick. I mean, you know, snack could refer to carrots or something. But we're looking in terms of these kind of
processed foods.
Well, yeah, sugary and salty, and again, that's value neutral, at least for now. You have any particular memories, good or bad, associated with any other kinds of food or something like that? I know food smells could be a powerful memory if taste is related to that.
Yeah, there's definitely certain foods that bring me back to certain moments. We were really lucky to have a very generous great aunt that lived next door to us, and she always kept a fridge and freezer full of treats. And I have really strong memories associated with the things that she would always have around for us. So, for instance, bonbons. Yes. If you guys out there have ever had a bonbon, it's essentially a ball of vanilla ice cream surrounded in sort of a chocolate shell, and it's like the perfect ratio of chocolate to vanilla, in my opinion. And you bite into it, and there's just that like delicious vanilla core to it. And we would always have bonbons when we would go over to visit her, and that was always really delicious. And then the other ice cream that we would often have there was one of those like like a plastic sack almost. It was like a tube, and the tube was full of like a stack of these vanilla and orange sort of creamsicle Dixie cups. And you would use this wooden spoon, and you could like scoop it out, and you would eat directly out of the container with that, and then you'd kind of gnaw on the spoon afterwards like a beaver until you got splinters in your mouth. and that was always a really fun thing to enjoy too. And to this day, I just love the taste of vanilla and orange together for like the ice cream sherbet combination. And it's I think in part there's that memory that brings me back to that, but it's also really just an excellent combo. So those are some of the ones for me. You know, clearly I'm into ice cream, but
well, who isn't? Yeah, especially when it's this hot out. I mean, I think that people will often have memories, hopefully more good than bad, of things they ate when they were a kid, because you're not as able to pay for food and feed yourself, especially when you're really young. And so the things that are given to you, that is a comfort, and it reminds you of being nurtured in that way. And so it doesn't really matter to a degree if it's super healthy or consequential, because you have those moments associated with it where you're kind of sitting down at a party and everyone else is having the big adult food and you're having something, candy bar or something. I know a lot of good s'mores memories. I mean, I couldn't really name it in particular, but camping, like the things that you eat on camping trips especially lends itself well to that, because you're putting a lot of stuff in a backpack and it's more compact that way. Holidays, obviously we might have other conversations in the future about particular holidays, but just I mean, Halloween, I mean, you mentioned Pixie Six earlier. That's just like full on Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. They're just like, I really just don't have enough time to list all the brands, because again, most of them are still around. Yeah. I mean, I'm not discriminating against Snickers or Milky Way or any of those things, but I think a lot about these other brands that were I feel like stay with me here. I feel like a candy is a kind of snack, but not all snacks are candy. When I say that out loud, it seems pretty obvious.
That's
but
fair.
the reason I'm not talking as much about candy is because of that. But I do have a lot of strong memories associated with candy. Warheads. I remember at a friend's house when I was young. I tried one of those. I think for the first time.
Yeah.
I was just like, my mouth was a fountain. And it just hits.
Do you remember what warhead it was?
I don't. It was probably either watermelon or you think about the color. It was probably either red or green. I really couldn't say. The weird thing is, another thing that is at a snack bar, as it were, in my office, is Warheads, which is weird because everybody there is an adult. And I don't know that I've ever seen an adult have a Warhead besides myself and my immediate circle. So I every once in a while, just to feel something, I'll have one of those, and it is an intense sensation.
Well, it's kind of like if you hit that 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock slump, you just pop a Warhead in your mouth.
Yeah, who needs
that
coffee?
Just fires you up for the rest of your workday.
Yeah, it's like when a guy shoots himself in the leg with adrenaline in an action movie.
Exactly. I'm juicing right now. I think for me, the one that always got me the worst was Black Cherry, Black Cherry Warhead. Yes. That one, I remember an occasion where I had one, and there was a period of time afterwards where I felt like I couldn't taste anything.
Probably couldn't.
Like it had done something to my tongue, and I was like freaking out that I'd permanently damaged my tongue. Which now as an adult, I was like, come on, like it wasn't nearly that bad. But as a kid, it really like freaked me out that this thing could be that sour. There were like lemon heads, I think was maybe the other one.
Lemon heads, those were specifically lemon, of course, pretty strong. Different brand, I would say. They didn't quite hit as hard as the Warheads, but definitely the intensity of those flavors, the sugariness, like we talked about, that was half the game, really. And I think, just before I forget, I think what carries on this spirit in a lot of ways is energy drinks. Because those have existed for a while, but I feel like they really did pick up steam in the late 90s, early 2000s, right? It's almost like a baton pass for a lot of that energy. Monster and Rockstar, sure. You walk into any gas station now and see these things, and these labels are going hard. And, they're more openly about being zero sugar now, but they got a lot of other stuff in there that'll get you where you want to go. So I think that is, outside of alcohol and drugs, I think that is the one product where I know I can go into the store and be like, dang, okay, this wants to get me hyped.
Well, it's like sugar is like a child stimulant, and then energy drinks are an adult stimulant.
Yeah, Guarana and taurine and B12 and whatever. Yeah, 5 hour energy. That's more of it. That's a shot. That's not even a snack.
Right. Oh man. Yeah. I don't know what this says about me, but so far I've managed to never drink an energy drink in my life.
You keep it up. I have one every. I try to do it no more than once a week. It's kind of like some people. It is a vice. I make no apology. It's like some people have a cigar every now and then. I don't agree with that. I wouldn't do it, but like, okay, go out on your porch. For me, that's. I have an energy drink every now and then. It's like it is a vice. It's a different state of energy. And sometimes I'm knuckling down on something, and the coffee's just not cutting it.
Absolutely no. There's no stigma that I'm wanting to impress upon others. It's just an observation about myself, I guess.
Sure.
I do have coffee.
Are there any?
So there's that.
Yeah, coffee's good, of course. Are there any other kinds of snacks that just straight up aren't around anymore, or have been like radically changed, and we're kind of, because that's the most bygone aspect of all of us, I would say.
Right. Off the top of my head, maybe it's indicative of the fact that many of them have come and gone, because I'm kind of blanking on any particular examples. I honestly, for the longest time, thought fruit gushers were gone, and then a friend of mine brought some to me that they had found at like a Costco, and I had them, and that really took me back. But I swear that there was less to gush in these fruit gushers.
Shrinkflation.
When I was a kid. I think it was a shrinkflation thing, because I bit into it and not like hardly anything came out. And maybe it's like my head is bigger now as an adult, so the ratio of like gusher to head is off. But yeah, I was a little like, oh man, I remember these being a little more gushery, but it was still tasty.
Well, yes, I'm sure they're hoarding the gusher reserves somewhere, rationing them out for the hard times ahead. So I definitely can name a couple things. One, and again, this could be stuff that still exists, and it just like completely entered my blind spot. I don't remember the name of them. It was a brand of the bottles, they were drinks, I guess. I don't think they were carbonated, so I wouldn't call them sodas. They were like super sugary juices. They would come in these little plastic containers, and the containers were shaped like characters. They were tall. I collected these. I collected the containers. I think our grandparents would have them. I had a drawer full of them. It's long gone by now. Do you remember what those were called?
I don't. Audience members, if you could please, if you're down there commenting and listening right now, please do share. But I can vividly remember them. They were tall. They were loosely shaped like a glass Coke bottle, but they were made out of a very pliable plastic that you could very easily squeeze and collapse. And yeah, they had sort of a loose sort of character's body, right, for the different ones.
Yeah, and I don't know if they were branded. I don't know if they were branded characters or they were made up for the product. The other thing too is, so the top of it you would twist off, and then you would just kind of suck on it, and it was, you know, about yay tall, and there were a bunch of different designs of these things, and yeah, it was just kind of like, again, not even fruit juice, just like sugar water, like a melted Otter Pop to acknowledge another brand, basically. Otter Pops.
Otter Pops also excellent.
And thank goodness they're still around. You can get like a gross of them at the store. Just roll out a sheaf of them like a scroll.
This hot weather's got me craving Otter Pops, the ice creams we've talked about, frozen Go-Gurts. Like there's all these those drinks you described. I feel like the drinks you mentioned, I do know there's a version of a product that's kind of similar, which is those things called Kool-Aid Jammers. Oh, okay, yeah, that would be the spiritual successor to it, I would imagine. And also those things, which I don't remember us having hardly ever as kids, but they looked like little plastic barrels, and there would be a little aluminum lid you'd peel off.
Yes. Similar, yes. Those like kid-friendly, because I think the idea is it's cheap, and then you don't have to worry about a kid breaking a glass or something if they are throwing it around or playing or whatever. It's a very light, theoretically disposable container. So yeah, no, it's no surprise why it was popular then. Another thing, and this is kind of cheating because this I didn't find out about until after it was a thing, while I was basically an adult. There was a candy bar called a Wazoo bar. And WAZOO, I don't know if it was who owned it, if it was like a Nabisco or, I mean, they're all the same 2 or 3 companies, but I don't know. I don't think it was branded or based on anything in particular. I was at a job fair or a book fair or something in community college, and there was a table, as you'll see at these things, where people are giving out candy to entice people to come over. And I saw this thing, and it was like pink and blue colored. About the size of like a Snickers or a Three Musketeers or something. And I was like, I've never seen one of these before. This was about, I think, maybe 2011 or 2012. And I had it, and it was a fruit flavor. And it was soft. It had like the layers of nougat that you would have in a Three Musketeers, where it was soft. And there might have been some speckles of something in there. But it was like a berry fruit flavor. And I looked them up later, and they just stopped making them right around that time. So the only place you would even get one anymore is if you found somebody who had a very well-preserved box of them. I think I looked it up a couple of months ago, and they were selling them, but I don't know if it was to normal people, and it was probably like at least a couple $100. And it was kind of a rare thing. Like, I wasn't even looking for this. It wasn't like it was some legendary candy that was just about to go out. I'm sure there were fans of it, but I just happened to find it, and it was this nice little experience, and it's kind of will never cross this way again, unless someone buys the brand, and maybe that's a business opportunity. I don't know. Bring back the Wazoo. Hashtag bring back Wazoo.
I don't recall ever seeing that myself. There's a lot of other candy bars I enjoyed growing up as a kid, but none of them really went anywhere. Like I really enjoyed I know this is kind of controversial. I guess a lot of people hate this, but like Three Musketeers bars I actually kind of like.
I like them too.
Sort of that kind of marshmallowy quality that they have. So, you know, Three Musketeers, Snickers bars, things of that nature. But all those persist. Like they didn't go anywhere.
Another one, not to cut you off, but and these are also still around, but I have really powerful memories of them. Breakfast bars, Rice Krispies treats, but also the Golden Grams ones or the S'mores ones, like where you get them. They were like a cube or a bar. That's still again. Gas stations. When I'm on a road trip, I start reverting back to that. I'm on the hunt for snacks like nowhere else, and so these things I've definitely grabbed one every once in a blue moon because it's all in there. It's the chocolate and the marshmallows and the graham, and it goes down so well.
Well, I'm pretty positive these still exist, but I also recall early memories of us sometimes getting those little packs where they had the tiny boxes of the cereal all lined up in a row.
Yeah.
And, we would kind of crack those open. Sometimes I would just eat them dry and I wouldn't even put them into a bowl. But they were like little miniaturized boxes of cereal. And only later did I learn, as a grown adult, that apparently you were supposed to actually use the box as the bowl. Did you know that?
I mean, that's my third eye opened.
Yeah. There's a serrated portion on the back of the box, and if you look at it, you're supposed to like pop it open like lids, and then you sort of I don't know if you're meant to like make an incision in the plastic bag or how that's supposed to work.
Yeah.
But apparently the box is the container into which you pour the milk. That's what I heard.
I mean, it's possible. I would have to find one independently and check, and maybe they stopped doing that. I don't know if it's a Mandela effect situation or what, but I've definitely heard tell of that, and I think it does. It's interesting because it presupposes a scenario where you have milk and possibly also scissors and a spoon, but not a bowl. A very unique set of circumstances, which I suppose could. I mean, again, we talked about camping. I don't know. I don't know what the thought process was there. I distinctly remember having them. I think, at hotels and stuff, incidentally, but when I would have sleepovers, I think maybe at some relatives' houses or friends' houses, it was a really easy way to just get something quick in the morning, because when you're smaller and younger, like, that's pretty much breakfast right there. And it was kind of cozy. I mean, the smallness of it had sort of almost an intimate feel to it in a way that was well suited to those occasions when you would just be kind of having a slow morning.
Yeah. Speaking of breakfast, I know that you're a Pop-Tart fan. You're a Pop-Tart man.
Yeah.
what's a like a top of the shelf? What's the best Pop-Tart out there? And then conversely, what is just the bottom of the barrel? Throw it in the garbage Pop-Tart.
Well, there's a lot of novelty flavors they'll put out. My old reliable is the s'mores one.
That's good.
It's the cookies and cream one is pretty good too, but it's a little more crumbly. I mean, I wouldn't say any of them are outright bad, but there's some that are just a little bit odd, where I think they're trying to emulate foods where I feel like the texture and the temperature is kind of the whole point. Like, I think there was a banana bread flavored one or something, which I like banana bread, but I don't. I mean, you got to think about the Holy Trinity is frozen, room temperature, and toasted. So you want to have something that's going to work in all of those different styles. I really don't care for the strawberry. It's the same reason I don't like Fig Newtons and that stuff. The cheap, like fruit puree or whatever they put in these things. It honestly, like, I'm not like allergic to it, but it just leaves a tang on my tongue that I don't honestly care for.
So I have a way of categorizing my sweets where I have sort of sweet, and savory sweet.
Okay.
And to me, like, sweet is like the fruity kind of flavors, and then the more savory sweet is kind of your deep chocolates.
Sure.
Maybe a little bit vanilla's kind of in the middle, but that's how I categorize sort of different types of sweet in broad strokes. So it sounds to me like you're more on the savory sweet side of things with Pop-Tarts.
Yeah. Overall, I think that the stronger fruit flavors I tend to save for smaller candies, your Skittles, things like that are you're having them either individually and it's a very powerful flavor like a Warhead, or something where that is the whole sensation. Like, I don't mix like Skittles and like M&Ms, for example, like fruit and chocolate. I mean, you can obviously have. I mean, actually, that's pretty good on a plate, but for whatever reason, like, I don't really want to combine like fruity and chocolate candies. I can do chocolate and salty. I'm not one of those people that puts M&Ms in their popcorn. It's too surgical for me. But I can alternate between the two. But I feel like I need a palate cleanser of water before I go over to the Junior Mints or something. Yeah,
I'd say that's fair. And of course, I don't know how much of this is getting too off topic, but you mentioned Junior Mints. Does the sort of the retro throwback snacks, does that include theater snacks?
Absolutely. No, I think that's completely on topic, because a lot of the times the settings in which you would have candy as a kid, especially if you don't really have it at home, is on special occasions, like when you're going out to Disneyland,
right,
or a theme park, and you have all these fun flavors.
Although let's save theme park stuff.
No. I know I'm on a tightrope there, but that kind of thing is part of it. Those special experiences that you associate with having those things, and I definitely recall. Yeah. When Shrek 2 was in theaters 20 years ago as of this recording, they had like and they still do these, but this is the first time I had seen it, like a themed container that had like paper Shrek ears or something, and when the popcorn was here, there was like an Airheads somewhere on the side, which, shout out to Airheads, by the way.
They're out of control.
Yeah, then more than ever. And then a soda, kind of a podium for a soda, a sodium. Well, there was sodium. You're gonna get sidetracked.
So yeah.
Totally, 100%. Nostalgic. I mean, usually if my memory of having them is just watching the movie. But popcorn, especially. I mean, no two ways about it. Even at home in the microwave, movie night.
Yep. All the things that you mentioned for sure. I loved Junior Mints are a classic. I really like the cookie dough bites.
Yes.
Especially if you can get them. Some theaters will actually, this is a little insider pro tip, some theaters will actually keep separate cookie dough bites in like a freezer space. And sometimes they'll offer it to you. Other times you have to ask them about it. But if you can get the cookie dough bites, but they're from the freezer, that's the better version. You want to get
on
them
the
from
rocks.
the freezer.
Yeah.
On the rocks. So those are really good.
Yeah.
I also like the ices. A lot of theaters, I think this was maybe a little bit less of the thing when we were younger, so maybe I'm cheating here. It's possible some theaters had it, but I'm a sucker for a good icy, and having those different, sort of your blue raspberry, your cherry, those kinds of things. Ices are always delicious. How do you feel about Mike and Ike's?
Mike and Ike's, I don't actively seek them out, but if I'm presented with some, I'm happy to have them. They have more of that fruit flavor to them, but usually if I'm getting candy, and this was the case when I was a kid too, I do want something that is a bit more, even more flavorful, honestly, like Nerds Ropes, Sour Patch Kids. I mean, again, all examples of stuff that's still going strong after 20 odd years because it's gummy and it's sugary, and that's not. I've kind of buried the lead here, but I love gummy candy, and
sour gummy worms.
I have been so. I mean, that was good grief. Yeah, man, that's it right there. Sour gummy worms, regular gummy worms too, but sour again, just a little extra, a little something on there to take the edge off. And there definitely was an arms race of this stuff because I remember they had sour Skittles, and again,
those were too much for me.
They were too much for me. Well, because I mean. I like the challenge because you'd have the Skittles, and then there'd be all that sugar at the bottom of the bag that you hadn't gotten to yet, and just.
For some reason that just reminded me of that one time that we were at I forget what it was, but we were at some sort of high school function, and one of our classmates snorted a line of sugar at a Denny's at midnight. Somehow we ended up probably afterwards. But I remember that just being why would you ever do that? But it's one way to get sugar
built
right
different.
Into the system.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too sidetracked with fast food because I think that does fit into this, but it's also kind of a separate conversation.
That could very much be its own conversation.
Yeah,
for sure.
but definitely. I mean, because you mentioned ices, I would get those now and then at a Burger King. Yeah, I feel like that's definitely a separate thing, but just to kind of loop that back around into this, changing trends and how foods are marketed to kids, the kinds of foods that are sold. Again, we've established junk food still exists, fast food still exists, but it feels like there definitely was a bit of a reckoning. And again, as of this recording, Morgan Spurlock passed away recently. Obviously, had a complicated legacy if you know about the guy, but he did put a lot of eyes on that stuff with Supersize Me, and I don't think it's any grand conspiracy to say that a lot of his stuff I think got scaled back after that. Would you agree?
So I was thinking about this the other day. Actually, it was when he had passed away and sort of the legacy of Supersize Me. And like you said, there were some issues with, shall we say, his scientific method employed. But the message was clear. This stuff is not good for us, and you shouldn't be fooled any differently. I don't know if it was a necessarily overnight change, but I do think that was sort of the beginning of fast food companies starting to really course correct on how aggressively they were marketing towards specifically kids. Yeah. And you can, look this up, and I think this would be worth going over in greater detail in another episode, but just to, to briefly touch on it, older fast food restaurants had the big play areas. They had the decor, like McDonald's had the big fake tree with a face, and they're really cartoonish visuals. You had Ronald McDonald, and that's a different conversation what happened to him. But a lot of this stuff that was very much this is for kids. And then now you go to a McDonald's, and you want to talk about sterilization, and I would argue swinging the pendulum. Now you go to a McDonald's, and it's this soulless corporate looking building. It's a place that really, in my opinion, doesn't really feel like a place where a kid would ever want to go. And you still have the red and the yellow, golden arches to kind of as a vestige of that legacy. But yeah, nowadays it's some of those places. It's I would argue it's almost like they're kind of catering more towards adults. It's kind of weird.
Exactly, and I kind of touched on that earlier. As far as a lot of these brands, they still endure, and I think you made a really important distinction there, which is that, but they still keep the arches. Like they didn't pull a Nintendo and make it this gray, imitation of Apple, which is like good, I guess, but at the same time, it's like this is the most important part. Everything else can be secondary, or they feel, and they seem to be proving correctly, because I still see lines around the block for fast food every day around town, that all that other stuff can go. And whether that's true or not, again, I think that'd be an excellent topic for another conversation. But that's the flip side of what we're talking about. Is you might lose some controversial ways that you're marketing junk food or fast food to kids, but in turn, you might also lose some of the style of it. And I think we might see that in some of these other brands as well. I
think there's a happy medium, and I don't know if like we look to the sort of the Scandinavian Nordic countries or something, and how they do some of those things. Maybe even Japan. I mean, I guess they use a lot of kind of cartoon characters even for stuff that's for adults, and it's another conversation. But there's ways to promote things in a fun and inviting way that's also able to be sort of wholesome and not predatory. And be inviting without being overly manipulative. And it's like, can we have the food be a little less poisonous and also still like whimsical and fun?
I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself, because I think you can have really exciting label for a banana, but then we have stuff in America where there's foods they just straight up can't sell in other countries because it's illegal to put the chemicals in them that we do, and that is. Again, that's something that is related to this, but I don't even have a background to go into. But I know enough about it to know that the reason why some of these foods taste different or aren't sold in other countries is because there's a lot of, I don't want to say like addictive chemicals, but sugar kind of is, and some of these other things they put in there because they can. I mean, there was a time, you want to talk about really winding the clock back, there's a time where a snack was giving your baby cocaine. The stuff that you could sell to anybody, let alone children, has changed quite a bit in the last 100 years. So definitely. Processed food definitely has its problems, but every time healthy food's good too, but every time I buy a thing of strawberries and it goes bad in 3 days, I'm like, man, I kind of just want to Hostess cherry pie now, because that'll still be filling. But
give me dim preservatives.
Or a Twinkie or a Zinger. I mean, don't even get me started. We're too far gone now to get on the Hostess train. But it's no surprise that a lot of the technology to make that stuff came about in the 50s and 60s, when everyone was all up on domestic living and the space race and kind of what we now call retrofuturism. I mean, it was seen as a boon, as a pride at the time, to have these foods that could last forever, because they thought they might need them down in the bunker. And now we're still making food like that. We're still making food like that.
Well, and I was going to say, you were earlier mentioning, which is like a weird reminder, but like there are a lot of products, including ones we've described in today's conversation, which exist in other countries but are actually made with essentially all natural ingredients. And that's really bizarre, but it's a fact, because there's things we allow companies to do here in America that they just aren't allowed to do in other parts of the world. But one of the examples that stands out to me for that was Coca-Cola, which, Coke products, huge, including when we were growing up, a lot of tie-ins with like movies and stuff like that.
Yep.
But I think it like took until I was in college where someone explained to me the idea of Mexican Coke. And I had never heard of that before. I'm assuming you've heard of Mexican Coke?
Oh, yeah, no. Okay, no, I have. I'm sorry. It took me a second. Yeah.
So for those of you that don't know, Mexican Coke is essentially just Coca-Cola that's from Mexico. And the way that they produce Coca-Cola in Mexico is they use, unless it's changed recently, last I checked, they use like actual cane sugar for the flavoring, versus in America, it's the high fructose corn syrup. And there's people who swear up and down that Mexican Coke tastes much better and in some ways is ever so slightly healthier because they use actual sugar and they don't use that high fructose corn syrup junk. So that's just one little illustration of how not everything is the best version of the snacks and drinks you consume in America.
Yeah, or conversely, how we can't have proper Kinder eggs because they won't let you put little stuff in there because they think kids will eat it, which they're probably right, but at the same time, what a loss.
That's natural selection at that point. If some little kid is dumb enough to look at that and see the little, picture like toy inside and they devour the entire thing like Augustus Gloop and Willy Wonka, then... Yeah, you gotta learn your lesson somehow. I don't know what to say.
I was thinking about that Onion headline: "Fun toy banned because of 3 stupid dead kids."
Jeez.
But yeah, fortunately, most of these foods, as long as you have them in moderation, they're fine. They're not literally poisonous. The dose makes the poison. Not to get too philosophical, but you can have too much water, you can have too much alcohol, you can have too much of anything. So
yes, I agree. Yeah. I definitely have a sweet tooth, so I am not one to throw stones in a gingerbread house. But I will say, just kind of getting here up on my soapbox for a second. I do think that sugar is addictive. I think there's a lot more science coming out, especially with the sugars we use in the U.S. And I do agree with countries that have started to impose certain types of sugar taxes or things that are meant to sort of disincentivize the consumption of like big gulp sodas. Because like soda in particular is real bad for getting, diabetes and stuff like that because it's liquid sugar. So I encourage some more intervention to help people. Because if you just tell people eat less sugar, that's not going to change. Like obesity rates are like skyrocketing in America right now. So I do think that we need to help not only children but adults, help them a little bit to kind of in the same way that we've helped with taxes on alcohol, taxes on cigarettes, like certain vices where it's like you are more than welcome to enjoy this, but like we're going to help you experience this in moderation and remind you that this is something that you shouldn't be just downing for $1 a gallon or whatever. So I do advocate for that. But at the same time, I also love the fact that we are allowed to occasionally indulge in just like incredible excesses in small instances because what's more American than that?
Yeah, well, and then again, it is something to count your blessings on. I mean, again, to some other meme or tweet someone had made, it was like, the average Dorito contains more extreme cheesy flavor than a Franciscan monk would have in his entire lifetime, or something like that. Like a lot of this stuff is so. We are in a land of plenty, and the people, when you have too much of this food, it stops being special, and it is not something that you should have all the time. But I think that those special moments and those special memories from youth stand out all the more when they fit into those special moments, whether it's a theme park or a fair or one of those other things where it's unique in that way. We
didn't even get into the fair food. Oh man,
we got fairs. That's gonna be a separate conversation again. See, I mean, who knew we get all this out of snacks? I mean, I was just gonna talk about Go-Gurt, and now we're doing sweeping policy changes and big food and all these things. But it seems like
food is a cultural touch point.
Yeah, but speaking of, I guess, microwave dinners, we're all looking a little cooked after all that vigorous conversation in this heat. So shall we move on to the final portion of the show?
Yes, I believe so. I'm about to actually melt like many of the candies we've been describing, so we better wrap this up. But I'm trying to think. I know we've been doing the trend of saying, bring it back or bygone. We've been talking over a variety of different snacks, so I'm not sure we're picking any one to refer to. But I guess I'll introduce it in terms of like the explicit era, and I think maybe we've already answered this, but just to kind of fit it into our structure here. Let's say bring it back or bygone as to that specific sort of combination of sort of snacks from the 90s, early 2000s that were sort of, I don't know if edgy is the word, but they were kind of, very ambitious, in your face. It was a lot about like how sugary can this get, how wild can we get, kind of zany with the way it was marketed, and frankly the sugar content, through the roof.
Yeah.
So with all of that kind of general concept in mind, and some of the other snacks that maybe fit that are outside of the sugary category, what's your take on that as opposed to the more kind of I guess kind of organic, snacks of today?
I before I answer, I just want to shout out one more thing, which I think adds a different dimension to this. How it feels to chew 5 gum.
This is how it feels to chew.
Yes, so I don't know that I ever did, but again, that's a different flavor of extremeness and edginess. That was a little later in the 2000s, but anyway, just wanted to put that out there. I'd be remiss not to.
Didn't actually taste all that remarkable.
Well, that's again. Power branding. I would say bring it back. I would say again. I think we're kind of fudging this one maybe again because there are a lot of brands that still do this, but they've changed. It's shifted towards soda, shifted towards energy drinks and alcohol and IPAs, which I don't like. They always have the most insane labels.
Yeah, that is.
Put
weird.
that on a yogurt or something. Yeah, just I think I definitely would like to see that come back, and I think just random example of how this can still work. Liquid Death. They're out there selling. They're out there selling sparkling mineral water, but it's got a cool skull on the label, and the names are things like buried alive or whatever. And that
Mango
really
chainsaw.
That's all it takes. Yeah, no, I think it's really. If we all admit and embrace the fact that this is kind of something silly and it's a frivolous food, I guess I would say. It's like the food version of a silly pop song, and. What's wrong with that?
I agree. I would say bring it back as well. And I do think the things you listed are ways, now these are, of course, us, I think, seeing it also through the lens of adults. Because, we're not as in touch with, kids these days as we once were. But we're seeing it, I think, in things like Liquid Death. Now, it's meant to be, extreme. It's meant to have that intensity to it. And like you said, it's at the end of the day, I don't think anybody's drinking that earnestly believing that they're being, really cool and edgy by consuming it, but they're having fun with the fact that it's got that intensity to it. And it's not some sort of, soft ginger sort of, talking rain-esque, with hints of lavender or whatever. It's like, there's a punch to it. And I'd like to see more of that. I don't want it to be like oversaturated to where everything I'm consuming has this like ironic edge to it.
When they put a bean mouth on Toucan Sam, I got a little upset.
we didn't even get it. That's another discussion on. It doesn't even necessarily have to be like dark or edgy or aggressive. It just I like that passion, that energy that comes with that really just sort of boisterous way of presenting the products, presenting the snacks.
Pop Rocks.
And being more creative. There we go. Pop Rocks. Pop Rocks and soda, right? That's another.
And they would put Pop Rocks in other things. There was a candy bar called an Explode Bar, and I never had one of these. I just read about it. It was a chocolate bar with Pop Rocks in it. And you'll see versions of this from time to time, but I think that definitely started in like early 2000s.
I can't believe we forgot about Pop Rocks until just now. There's so many out there. Like, definitely, folks at home, please don't hesitate to share examples, because I'm sure we have missed so much, even with what we've tried to cover in this.
And I'm happy to learn about new ones. Like, absolutely. Again, we got a dual, we got a two bring it backs up over here. But I'm always excited. I mean, I always love it when I learn about a new restaurant. I love it when I learn about a new snack. Even if it's something I'm only going to have once and be like, hey, check out this thing I got at the gas station. New ways to combine chocolate and vanilla. And I mean, every time you think you've seen every kind of Oreo, but make another one when my back is turned. Candy's never going away. That's a beautiful thing. We just have to kind of think about the best styles and best types and hope that other folks like them enough for them to keep making them. We can bring back the Wazoo bar.
Right up the wazoo. Excellent. Okay, well, I think that's a good note to end on before we completely just incinerate the temperatures right now. We got to get the fans going again. I'm going to go up from here and get like a popsicle or something. Now all this talk of frozen treats has got me really craving something.
No doubt.
But otherwise, thank you all for listening and or watching. We'll be back again soon with another episode. And I've been your host, Kyle White.
I'm Trevor White.
And we are the Bygone Bros.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.